James. I'm the executive director for the Embry-Riddle Worldwide Center for Career and Professional Development. And today we have two very special guests. We're very honored to have them returning from a previous session. We have none other than Ms. Maram Cadwell, and she is a national engagement manager. And along with her, we have actually her supervisor, Miss Lori Richardson, with over 30 plus years of experience. She's the director of investigations. Now, Ms. Maram Cadwell is a national security professional with 18 plus years of experience in intelligence and federal background investigation. She holds degrees in criminal justice and homeland security and has supported federal operations and education. Our other guest, Ms. Lori Richardson. She's the director of investigations at Paragon Investigations. She has nearly 30 years of experience in federal background investigations, serving in leadership roles from investigator to director of investigations. She holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Florida Atlantic University. So welcome to both of them. Before we actually turn the session over to them, we would just like to mention that we have a number of events that the Career Ready Club is sponsoring. Along with today's session, we also will be having a session, information session with Blue Origin, and we'll place these things in the chat at a later time. This will be on January the 26th. Along with, we also will be having an event, social mixer event at the Savannah campus. So if you're in that area, please save the date. I believe that date is March the 28th, which is a Saturday, and we'll give you more information on that. But without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce and turn it over to Miss Maram Cadwell. Maram?
All right. Thank you so much, Arnold. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. What a warm welcome. I always enjoy being with you guys and doing this presentation with the students. So thank you so much again for the opportunity. We've got a ton of information, a ton of good stuff for you guys today. I will get right into it here. I will be turning the camera off here while I do the presentation just so that I do not distract myself. But I will tell you, as Arnold pointed out, we are expecting a ton of snow in the DC area. And so that is why I am at the beach emotionally, mentally today. So that is kind of the reason for that. But I will get right into it. Lori will join us towards the end, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions, you can either put them in the chat or just hold off until the end, and we'll be happy to address those. All right, let's see if I know how to work the system here now. Perfect. All right, so security clearances. Topic today is navigating security clearance and staying competitive in today's job market. One of the biggest questions we get in our industry from students and those that have never had a security clearance before is, well, how do I get a security clearance? How do I go about getting a job that requires a security clearance? Is it something I could purchase? Is it something I could get? Is it a certification? So this presentation is going to answer a lot of those questions. Go into some of the details of what the investigation process entails, the background investigation process, how long it takes, what to do to prepare, and how to make yourself competitive in the national security sort of realm and sector. So what is a security clearance? A security clearance is a status granted to an individual that allows them to access classified information or restricted areas. So a security clearance is something that is tied directly to a position. And it is granted to an individual to fill that specific position. For the government, the US government, to trust an individual with classified or sensitive information, they must make sure that individuals are one, loyal, two, trustworthy, and three, reliable. And to make that determination, a background investigation is conducted on individuals. Again, individuals taking federal government positions or private sector positions that require clearances have to meet certain criteria. And again, this is designed to protect the U.S. government against outside elements, so acts of sabotage, espionage, and terrorism. There are different types of clearances. There are three classified levels of information. There's a top secret clearance, secret, and confidential. And the degree of damage to national security that could result from the unauthorized disclosure determines which classification applies. So you've got TSSCI, that is a top secret clearance with a sensitive compartmented information SCI, which is a add-on to a top secret clearance for specific positions. Intel analysts, senior military officials, defense officials usually will require a TSSCI. A TSSCI, CI poly, that's a counterintelligence and polygraph. Then you have TS with a full scope poly, which is a lifestyle poly. Those of you that have read any positions, for example, with the intel community, those are usually counterintelligence polygraphed positions. Positions with the CIA would be lifestyle polygraph or full scope poly. And then you have your Department of Justice and DOE clearances. So again, based on the information and the access that an individual has, that gets to determine the level of the clearance. So as an individual, I cannot say, hey, I want to be an intel analyst with a top secret clearance. Unless that position requires a top secret clearance, I can't make that request. And that determination of that level of clearance is again decided by the employer, starts from the federal government, and if it's private sector, so government contracting, they will follow what the federal government has designated that position to require or to need. Again, the information that the individual has access to determines the level of the clearance. Um, Confidential is the lowest access level of clearance. Then you have secret clearance, which is the most common. Again, these are your military personnel, contractors, intelligence support staff. Then the top secret, which I referenced earlier, this requires the most intensive background investigation. And then as you add the SCI, the poly, and the full scope, they become more and more intense. Who needs a clearance? A person that is employed by an organization that is sending, receiving, or developing information that the government has deemed important to national security will need to have a security clearance. This could be anyone from, let's say, a cafeteria personnel at a military base, janitorial personnel, all the way up to senior leadership. Anyone that has access to a facility where certain information, sensitive or classified, is kept will be required to have a security clearance. Now, the level of security clearance is determined by the specific position. Individuals must present a legitimate need to know in order to have a clearance. So, for example, a cafeteria personnel at a military base may not need the same clearance level as a military official. The same thing for a senior government employee may not need may need a different clearance than let's say a clerk in a court or a facility that does not have classified information. The need to know thing is very important with security clearances because, you know, you could be in a position where you have a top secret clearance and you may be moved to a different department and now be required to have a secret. That doesn't mean that your trust has lowered or that you are not eligible for TS anymore. It just means that the position that you are in now requires a different layer or a different security clearance. And so that need to know plays into what clearance an individual has, if or not they even have a clearance. How to obtain a security clearance. So this is one of the biggest things for students that are getting ready to graduate, and one of the biggest issues that they face is they go on to look for a position. Every position requires a security clearance, and some of them will say, must have this clearance or must be willing, and so. A security clearance is not something that one could get on their own. It's not something that they could purchase or do a certificate or something like that. A security clearance comes directly with a position, and that position sponsors the security clearance. So when applying for jobs or positions, you want to make sure that the position specifically says that they are willing to sponsor, especially if you don't already have a clearance. If the position says that a TS is required and you don't have any clearance, you are likely not going to get a call from a recruiter or a hiring manager. So, as you're reading the job descriptions and trying to find out your next steps after college, pay attention to those keywords. Most entry level federal positions will process new hires for a security clearance, and this is just part of the hiring process. So, if you're applying to an entry level USA Jobs post, it will come with a clearance. You will be sponsored for a clearance, especially if it's a position that says open to public. That position will sponsor you for your clearance, and you will get your clearance as a part of that position. Contractors, however, federal contractors often require that you already come with a clearance. And that is really boils down to one thing, and that's money. So it costs money to provide a clearance to an individual to run a background investigation. So a lot of these federal contractors would rather hire someone that already has the clearance. And this someone is either an individual who was with the federal government at some point and is no longer there, or was with a different contractor and got cleared through that contractor and is no longer there, and now they're looking for a position. So pay attention to kind of those things with the contractors and the entry level federal positions as you read job descriptions and kind of figure out where you fit in and where your background fits in. Again, a security clearance must be sponsored by a government agency or a private company that supports national security efforts. And that isn't to say that every private company that supports the federal government is going to require their employees to have clearances. There are a lot of government contracting companies that have, maybe 3 or 4 people that have clearances. The rest of the staff don't. Again, back to that need to know. So if it's like a front office personnel or a clerk or an assistant or secretary, they're probably not going to need a clearance because they're not going to access any sensitive or classified information. And the individuals in that office that do have the clearances know not to share information with that individual because they have not gone through the proper clearance process. So again, pay attention to the position and the details of what is required. Again, individuals cannot apply for nor purchase a security clearance on their own. You must be a U.S. citizen to obtain a security clearance. There are some exceptions to that. And two things just come to mind. Actually, one big one during President Obama's administration, there was a offer initiative to bring on military personnel, so enlist military personnel that didn't have U.S. citizenship, and as a result of their service to their country, they could obtain U.S. citizenship. And so there are some exceptions every now and again, just depending on the administration, what initiatives are in place. But just generally, to obtain a security clearance, you do have to be a U.S. citizen. If it's your first time and you don't have a clearance and you're applying to a government contractor, look for these keywords. If the position says must be able to obtain a security clearance, or clearance sponsorship available, or willing to sponsor, or clearance sponsorship opportunity. These are keywords for contractors to bring in entry level personnel and to also further advertise their positions. And you'll see a lot of times these keywords written next to positions that maybe not pay very, very well, but they're very good entry level positions because one, you get the experience as an entry level into that contractor or that company, and it comes with the clearance, right? So, entry level positions that come with the clearance, you really can't put a price tag on that, in my opinion. If a government contractor is willing to bring you on and give you a job and give you a clearance, or at least sponsor you for a clearance, that to me is awesome, right? You get in the system, you get your foot in the door, and get that experience that you need to then climb the ladder. Am I qualified? So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, hey, I want to support national security. I want to do something that is related to X, Y, and Z, and I know that I will need a clearance for this. We are our own best critic and our own best judge. We read ourselves better than anyone else can. So it's very important to sit down and think about what it takes to hold a clearance and to have a clearance, and understand what the criteria is so that you do not jump into something that maybe you shouldn't be jumping into if you know that maybe right now is not the right time. So prior to applying for any position, do your homework. Again, ensure that you meet the requirements, not just for the positions, but for the security clearance as well. It is a thorough process. It's extremely thorough. It looks at the whole person and it uses the 13 adjudicative guidelines to determine eligibility. And those 13 guidelines, which we'll go over here in a little bit, they're known as the criteria, and they determine if an individual should have access to sensitive and classified information. Understand what each criteria covers. And if you feel that there are any potential issues in your background, be prepared to address them. Again, be honest with yourself and with your employer. If you have an issue in your background that you believe would prevent you from being cleared, discuss it with your security officer. As a hiring manager for many years, and I'm sure Lori can speak to this later as well, that honesty is key, right? Because when you have an organization that is willing to give you a job offer and sponsor you for clearance, that's a lot of time and investment they're putting into an individual. So if there's any concern that you may not be cleared, it's very good to say that up front. You don't want to waste a company's time and money. And you also don't want to set yourself up for failure either, right? And most industries now, once you've kind of been told, hey, you should have discussed this, or this should have been brought up, or hey, you knew this and you didn't mention it, it kind of stays with you and it makes it difficult, to find opportunities in those industries. So if you feel that there is anything that may come up or may be of concern, I highly suggest that you discuss it with your security officer, and you'll know who that security officer is when you were given a job offer that requires a clearance, because that security officer is going to reach out to you and give you instructions on how to fill out the paperwork. And so you immediately will have a point of contact. And so if there's anything that needs to be mentioned, that is your POC for that. And here are the 13 adjudicative guidelines, and I'll just go over them and we'll kind of talk about them a little bit. Allegiance to the United States is one of them. Foreign influence, foreign preference, sexual behavior, personal conduct, financial considerations, alcohol consumptions, drug involvement and substance abuse, psychological conditions, criminal conduct, handling protected information, outside activities, and misuse of information technology. And I know a lot of you are looking at this and wondering, well, what does personal conduct cover? And what does financial considerations? What about alcohol consumption? Is one beer okay? Is four okay? What about misuse of IT? What if I downloaded music illegally 10 years ago? And it's good to understand what each of these are so that when it is time for you to fill out the paperwork, you know what needs to be reported and what doesn't need to be reported. So the 13 adjudicative guidelines are, this stuff is open information, so you could Google it and read about it and kind of go through the areas where you feel like there might be something that needs to be reported, or that's something that may be of concern. For example, If you've got a lot of foreign contacts, maybe you did a study abroad in Spain or something, and you met the Ministry of Defense there, and you guys, maintain contact. Read about foreign influence, read about foreign preference, read about any foreign contacts and how those may look during your investigation. So certainly feel free to kind of look these things up and kind of understand what they cover and what they entail, so that again, when you're sitting down to fill out the paperwork, you know exactly what you need to talk about and what you need to report. Here are the 5 reasons for clearance denials. So back to knowing yourself and judging yourself before you step into this background investigation process. Um, 5 top reasons for denials: financial considerations. So high levels of ignored debt, unpaid bills, or unfiled taxes. 2, personal conduct. So how have you carried yourself at school? How have you carried yourself at work and within your community? What is your reputation like? I always like to remind people, younger folks that I get a chance to talk to, is that somebody's always watching. Expect someone to always be watching. And I think in this day and age, we should also expect that we're also being recorded in some shape, way, or form. So always carry yourself in a way that, if some random person was to be asked about you, that they have good and positive things to say about you. Number 3 is foreign influence. So back to foreign contacts, close friends that are foreigners, and activity. Now, that is not to say, your grandma in Spain is a bad person and you can't contact her. It's not to say that, your spouse's parents in, I don't know, Guatemala should not have contact with you. Not at all. It's normal to have contacts with relatives and have foreign contacts, but do those foreign contacts present any issues for you? And understanding how those foreign contacts could impact your life. Drug use. So marijuana use is still illegal in the terms of SF 86. That is something that is still being worked. It's a fast moving topic. So understand kind of how that plays into the background investigation process. If it was allowed in one city or one state, and maybe not on your military base, even though it is a state or maybe a federal rule, if it's not allowed where you are serving or where you are, it is still not allowed. And then misuse of prescription medication. Um, Criminal conduct, so unchanged behavior and repetitive criminal activities. And that's a big one. A lot of people are kind of hard on themselves, at least in my opinion. And I've conducted hundreds of interviews, and Lori has too, and I'm sure she can touch on that. When you when we sit down with somebody who's going through the clearance process for the first time, they're very nervous and they almost want to just report everything. I stole a candy bar in 5th grade, and I stole my sister's hairbrush and threw it in the trash, and she cried for days. Some of those things are just natural things that we go through in life. The idea here is that it's not repetitive, right? You're not stealing a candy bar and then stealing cash from the register and then stealing your boss's stapler. You don't want to continue behavior that is wrong. And so if there is, with any of these, right, with any of these criteria, if there was a mistake here once, 7, 10, 11 years ago, and you learned from it and you can speak to it, not an issue. But if it's something is consistent and it's unchanged behavior, then certainly it will present an issue. So preparation and information gathering. So as you're getting ready to fill out the paperwork, you've been provided the job opportunity, you've been provided instructions, excuse me, to fill out paperwork. You want to address anything in your background that could present itself as an issue. So if you've got a ton of debt that you haven't paid, set up some type of payment plan. Get with a financial counselor. Run a credit report. Understand what it is that you owe. Try to make small payments. I mean, even $5 on an account shows that you care, shows that you are making an effort to handle your debt. It's a problem when you ignore your debt. Just like any other issue in our lives, if we ignore it, it becomes a problem. And so if you've got debt, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get cleared. Just address the debt. And that way, when you sit down with your investigator, you have records of, hey, look, I set up a payment plan. I'm working on this. I make this much and I'm able to give $10 to this account a month. And that's going to go a long way. Collect documents, record if there are any records of prior criminal conduct, drug use, alcohol related issues, anything that you believe worthy of discussing, make sure you have documents for. And I'll just give you a quick example. So, college student, was at a party, was underage, had a couple of drinks. Campus police showed up. There is a record at the school of this individual being spoken to about underage drinking, learned their lesson, didn't do it again, waited till 21 to go to parties with alcohol. Right? There's a record, there's a story there. You can speak to it. But if there is repeat underage drinking on campus and constantly, there's reports that are there, obviously needs a little bit more discussion and could present as an issue. But honesty is key here with any of the issues, any of the adjudicative criteria, anything on the paperwork. Honesty is key. We do actually have investigators actually have an issue code for dishonesty on the background investigation in the process. So if you are seen as dishonest, whether that is saying something that is contradicting a record, or if something was to be reported and you didn't report it, there is a dishonesty code that we have that we place on the investigation. And you don't want to have so many dishonesty codes throughout your investigation. So again, honesty is key. If you are hired and you're given the job offer, you will be given a conditional offer. And this will be contingent upon successful completion of a background investigation process. And you'll fill out the SF-86, and the SF-86 is the form that asks you to basically list your background and go through everything that you've done, places you've lived, places you've worked, your friends, your coworkers, your supervisors, schools you've attended. This is done through eQuip, which is also referred to as EAP. Avoid a paper version. And I say that because I've seen so many times where, especially with military personnel, young kids joining the military for the first time, you've got the military recruiters, hand a kid a paper version of the SF-86. And, the kid sits down and fills it out. And, maybe a word is misspelled, or a date is incorrectly written down. And then now the recruiter then takes this paper version and enters it into an online system, and you're expecting and you're at the mercy of this individual of entering in the information correctly as you listed it on the paperwork. And maybe sometimes they will, but maybe sometimes they don't. And so you want to be in charge of that online system. You want to say, I filled out the form, so that when the investigator sits down with you and asks you, why did you list, Bob Smith as your supervisor at, Navy Federal. Bob Smith says he doesn't know you. You don't sit there wondering, well, who's Bob Smith? I didn't put Bob Smith on my paperwork, and somebody just decided to enter something in to make the application move forward. So avoid a paper version, and SF-86 is done online. If you're asked to do a paper version by a recruiter, ask that you also be present when the online version is completed. Paper versions of SF-86s are not submitted anywhere. It is always entered into the system online. So just make sure that you're following that trail, that you're following up and making sure that what you're putting on the paper is actually what is being put online. And then the questionnaire is generated once security personnel begin processing you for a position. So you're given the conditional offer. Your security officer, who I referenced earlier, will go ahead and put in your information, your name, your social, your date of birth, and it will generate a link that you'll fill out, the SF-86. Once you fill it out, you hit submit. You will have some time to fill out the SF-86, but it's also important to do your homework ahead of time. So if you're applying and in the process of getting a position that requires a clearance, and you know that you'll eventually need a clearance, the SF-86 is, again, open information. You go on Google, type in standard form 86, a copy of it will come up, print it out, and read through each question and be prepared to fill those things out. If you've never seen the SF-86, I highly suggest, make it like a 15-minute reading this weekend, print it out, read over it, just to kind of get your mind on what it requires. You know, how many years do you have to go back on residence? How many years do you have to go back on education or on employment? Um, so that you know what to expect, so that when the time comes and you're given the offer and you're given, let's say, a 5-day window to fill out this form, that you're not, running around trying to figure out this information, texting mom and dad, where were we, in 2015, and where did I live, and who was my roommate, and who was my boss at this place. Try to get ahead of it by doing your homework. Um, and the clearance process is long. It's several important steps. So first is the questionnaire submission. That's SF-86. You submit it. And once you submit it, it goes through processing with the requesting agency, and it is assigned to an investigator. Investigator will reach out to you, set up a time to meet with you. We'll do your investigation, your interview, and it could either be in person or it could be virtual. A lot of the federal background investigations, especially for the DoD now, are virtual. If you do get contacted by an investigator, certainly ask for their badge number. There is a verification hotline number so that you could verify that it is an actual DoD investigator reaching out to you. Nonetheless, investigator will do your interview. They'll type up their report and they will send it up. They will hit submit on the report. Now, once they hit submit and transmit on their report, they have no clue what happens with your investigation. And calling them 5 times or 10 times or texting them, they're not going to be able to give you an update. And the system is designed that way, right? So once they do their interview, they hit submit and that's it, right? Unless it comes back for rework or for some additional information and they reach out to you because they need more information, they really can't provide you an update on whether it was granted or if it was adjudicated or when it's going to be adjudicated, or give you any sort of timeline. From the investigator, it goes to adjudication where a decision is made. And the adjudication is separate from the person hiring you for the position. So your supervisor is not going to see a copy of your SF-86. Your manager won't know if you stole a candy bar when you were 10. They're not going to see anything that you put on the form. So it goes to adjudication. Adjudication then makes a decision and decides whether or not you are eligible to have this clearance and whether you are trustworthy, reliable, and you are able to serve in the position that you've been hired for. Once that adjudication is completed, that decision is then sent to the requesting agency. So let's say it's a college graduate joining the military. Adjudication services will go ahead and make the decision, send it to the Department of the Army and say, hey, this guy is good, he's ready to go. They will notify you that your clearance has been completed and successfully adjudicated, and then you're entered into this continuous evaluation, CE, and that is basically the federal government's way of kind of keeping eye on you. And so that you're in this continuous evaluation, meaning you are continuously being evaluated. So if you get a parking ticket or you're charged with something somewhere in some city or state, the information sharing mechanism allows the system to flag, hey, Bob Smith at this location was pulled over for a DUI. And so then your security officer gets that information and they're able to get with you and address it promptly. And that is a newer thing. Continuous evaluation is new last few years. Before that, there's a lot of dependency on the individual to report the issue. So, if somebody got a DUI, it was expected that they go, and report it. And it's still expected today, but the FSO will probably know about it almost as soon as it happens. Clearance process. So again, questionnaire and submission, the investigation takes place, completion and adjudication, a decision is made, and then you're entered into continuous evaluation. During the form submission, when you're filling out the SF-86, you may be required to submit fingerprints, and that's something that your security officer will communicate with you. They'll give you instructions. Generally, it's a local police department. You'll go in, there's like a white card. You do your fingerprints. and send it back in a FedEx envelope to your employer. And then that's sent up to the federal government for processing. Everything else I think we covered. During the investigation period, when the investigator contacts you to do your interview, they're going to be reviewing the SF-86 with you. So the form that you fill out, they will have a copy of it. If you have a copy of it, bring it with you or have it with you at the interview. Um, that way you can go along with the investigator. And if you don't have a copy, no big deal. They've got it. They'll go over it with you. If there is anything that has happened to you or for you, got a job, you got married, you moved, you have new debt, whatever it is, if something has changed since you fill out the case papers, you will need to inform the investigator. So up until the point of the interview, whatever has happened needs to be reported. Interview day, if you realize that you forgot to report something, that is the time to tell the investigator. If something has changed, make sure they know. And they will ask you, has anything changed? Do you still live at this address? Now, once they're done talking to you, then either that same investigator or another investigator, depending on where the other parts of your case are, we'll talk to your supervisors, your former coworkers, your neighbors, and references that you listed will also be interviewed. The background investigation process looks at a person and the whole person approach. It does not look at an individual and say, hey, your DUI defines you. Because you have a DUI, you can never be clear, you can never be trusted. And it also does not look at a person and say, hey, just because you got, promotions every single year at work, you are great. You're going to be great for a top secret clearance. No, it looks at the whole person. And this is used to determine eligibility, right? So it looks at an individual in all facets of their life, in all aspects of their life. How are they at school? How are they at work? How are they at with their references? How are they with their friends? And what is their finances like? And what is their behavior like? And what is their spending like? And it looks at an individual as a whole. So back to the point I made about us being our hardest critic and our best judge. You may look at yourself and say, I'm never going to get cleared because I had this problem, or I'm never going to get cleared because I have this issue. You may get cleared and not have a single problem, right? Because it's going to look at your whole life, you as a whole, not just one issue or just one incident. Um, tips and reminders. So while you're in the process for a position, get ahead of the game by preparing your information. Again, get dates, locations of all foreign travel within the last 7 years, dates and addresses of all places you've lived in the last 10 years. If you've rented, you need your landlord's information, roommates, any issues you had at that location. College is a great time to start thinking about these things because you're in it, right? And you know your roommates' names, you know the building and the building number that you're in. Because once you leave and you're not there for 2, 3, 4 years, you forget those things. So you want to make sure you keep track of this information if you know that you're going to end up in this line of work. Dates and addresses of institutions where your degrees were obtained, and someone that knew you there. It's okay if it's a friend, it's okay if it's your roommate, it's okay if it's a professor, or a career advisor, just the name of someone that could verify that you were there and speak to you while you were at that school. You need the name and contact of 3 trusted references who you have social contact with. These are people that should know you from social settings. So people that know you when you let your hair down. That know you when you have fun, right? But also not like too much fun. And I say that tongue in cheek because sometimes individuals will do something crazy, with Bob Smith, and then they'll say, "Oh, Bob Smith is gonna, talk great about me," and maybe Bob Smith will get nervous during the interview and only talk about that crazy thing. So be mindful of who you list, right? List people that know you, that genuinely know you, that can speak honestly about you, um, uh, and that have enough social contact with you to speak about you. So if an investigator goes up to a person and says, "Hey, do you know Bob Smith?" And he says, "Yeah, I know Bob. I have drinks with him once a year." That's not enough to know somebody, right? You want to list somebody that you have regular social contact with. Um, because there is a quote unquote coverage that needs to be obtained during the investigation process. And if you don't have people that could speak to you in social settings or can speak about you in social settings, and those social settings are, not like once a year, your investigator is going to have to find somebody that knows you more intimately. And so be mindful when you list those three people, the first one being the person that knows you the most, second person being the person that knows you a little bit less, and then and so forth for the third person. I've had individuals that I've interviewed that have listed, their mom's best friend. That's a good reference, but your mom's best friend is not with you when you're going, through school and you're in your classes, when you're going to parties, and your mom's best friend is not with you when you're going through problems, and they can't speak to how you deal with stress in school and how you deal with personal problems and a breakup and things of that nature. So kind of be mindful of who you list. If you are a naturalized citizen, gather all of your citizenship documents, your birth certificate. Make sure you have those copies of those documents, the numbers associated with them, that information is very important for the SF-86 and for your background investigation process. If you hold dual citizenship and you have a passport from another country, have that reported. Honesty is key. It is not a problem in and of itself, but certainly leaving it off and not reporting it is going to be a problem. And expect that we already know. Expect that the investigators already know. So if there are things that need to be reported, report it. And then any other documentation or information that you feel like you will need. So again, back to the finance thing, right? If you've set up payment plans, make sure you have those documents. Make sure that you have paper documents of the payment plans that you set up, when you set them up, why you went into debt, why you couldn't keep up with the payments, things of that nature. More tips and reminders. Be responsive to your investigator. There is nothing worse than being an investigator and trying to contact an individual for their interview and they're ignoring you. Because we wonder sometimes, does this person even want this job? And investigators are in tight deadlines. I mean, now we're talking 2 week deadlines for interviews. So investigators are on tight deadlines. The investigation process is lengthy. So the sooner you make time to sit down with your investigator and do your interview, the better it is for you, because that's the sooner they can hit transmit and the sooner it goes to adjudication, and your decision is made. So be responsive, even if it's, calling them back and saying, "Hey, I'm busy this week. I've got exams. I'll get back to you in 2 weeks." At least communicate. Because if the investigator continues to reach out to you and you continue to ignore them, they could report it as unresponsive, and that'll go back to the agency as the individual being unresponsive, and that does not look good. So be responsive to the investigator. Be early to your interview, whether it is in person or virtual. Don't be late. And if the investigator is running late, be what's the word I'm looking for? Investigators have to go from appointment to appointment. And sometimes, a 2 hour interview could be 3 hours. And that investigator should reach out and should let you know, "Hey, I'm running late. I'm coming from one interview to another." But you should always be ready, right? Treat your interview, your background interview, as the actual job interview all over again. So be prompt and dress appropriately. I've had people come to their interviews in all kinds of outfits. I mean, coming from the gym. I had one guy come in like an undershirt. Be dressed appropriately, dress professionally. Again, pretend it is the job interview all over again. Put away your phone. There is nothing worse than being an investigator and trying to interview someone and they're constantly texting or on their phone. I always recommend at the beginning of the interview, to put your phone on silent. If you've got, somebody who is going to need you, send them a message and tell them that, you're not going to be available for the next hour or two, however long the investigator tells you the interview will be. And then if you need to get a name and a number from your phone, just ask the investigator. I've got so and so's name and number in my phone. Could I get my phone to give it to you? And they won't have a problem with it. But certainly keep your phone away. Don't take pictures. Don't take videos. These are all indicative of the type of employee and individual you're going to be in your service to your country. So be polite and be proper with the phone use. Bring your documents with you. Prepare to be honest about past events. Your investigator is there to interview you and to tell your story in a report. They're not there to judge you. They're not there to point fingers or to laugh or to make you feel bad about an incident that may have happened. Be honest. They are the representative of the federal government. They are the only person that you're going to speak to about your past. So, don't be afraid to be honest. Don't be afraid of being embarrassed or being judged. That is not why they're there. Trust me when I tell you, once they hit transmit on your case, they're not going to remember a thing. Investigators work cases day in and day out. For us, it's meeting the requirements of each case, doing our due diligence to ensure that we do a proper report, and then we move on to the next case. Ask questions. Do not blindly answer questions. Understand what the question is asking. If you don't understand it, ask for clarity. There is a question that we ask friends and colleagues and references sometimes is, does the individual live within their means? Or have there been any indications of unexplained affluence? Some people don't even understand what that question is, but they'll say no, or they'll say yes, or they'll just haphazardly answer something. Um, and sometimes, as an investigator, we kind of pause and we ask the person, do you know what I just asked you? And sometimes they'll say, no, I don't know, but I'm just, I'm answering. Don't answer anything blindly. If you don't know what the question means or what they're asking, just ask. Say, what do you mean by that? What exactly does that question mean? And what does it entail? So that the answer that you're providing is the proper answer. If you need a break, ask your investigator. Again, your investigation could be virtual, it could be in person. Certainly communicate. We don't want you to be sitting there uncomfortable, maybe needing to go to the bathroom, maybe needing a cup of water. Just ask, could I get a break? The other thing I like to tell individuals during interviews is sometimes, excuse me, going through the interview process for the first time could be very overwhelming for someone, especially if you have a lot of stuff to report, right? A lot of the things that young people have in their lives are really not even of their own doing, right? Maybe they're a naturalized citizen. Maybe they come from a country where there is a lot of political stuff going on, right? And a lot of it has really nothing to do with them. They're just a product of kind of just life and people moving from country to country and politics. And it could be very overwhelming. So if you feel that you are feeling overwhelmed during your interview, or maybe you did something and it's kind of the talking about it or the memory of it is making you uncomfortable, just tell the investigator, this is making me a little uncomfortable. I just need a minute, or please just give me a few minutes to gather my thoughts. Because us investigators, we do the same thing. So if we're overwhelmed with information, or if we've got a ton of questions that we're asking and we're just not able to mentally process things, we'll tell the individual, excuse me, I just need 2 minutes to kind of gather my thoughts and prepare my next series of questions for you, right? Because investigators are not robots. They're also processing the information at the same time that the individual is speaking. And so we may not know right away the proper follow-up question. So if you need time, ask for it. And if they need time, be respectful of that. Generally, a first time interview can be approximately 2 hours. Make sure that you set time, extra time aside, because if it does go over, then you want to make sure that you have the time to dedicate to it. Be prompt in providing your investigator with additional information. So if they call you back a week after your interview and they say, "Hey, I forgot to get this," or "Hey, they're asking for this," give them the information. Be prompt, be quick, so that they have what they need to get the case submitted. And then most important thing here, do not make anything up. If you don't know an answer, say, "I don't know." And that is whether you are being spoken to for somebody else's case or you are being spoken to for your own case. If you do not know an answer, say, "I don't know." Do not make anything up because you will be held to it later if it comes up. Once your security clearance, once you've obtained it and it's been adjudicated, it is maintained as long as you continue to support a national security mission, have a need to know. You are required to report lifestyle changes to your security department. Ensure you understand what your responsibilities are as a clearance holder. If you are not sure about what is a reportable item, discuss it with your FSO. So this is once you're cleared, once you're in the job, what is it that you need to do to maintain your clearance from a security standpoint? Your clearance can be upgraded based on your position. So if you start off as a junior analyst and only need a secret and you're promoted to a senior analyst and you need a top secret, your clearance is going to be upgraded. Additional information may be needed, but certainly it will get upgraded. You do not have to start the process all over again from square one. Most are transferable now. The reciprocity process allows you to take a clearance from one position to another. Continuous evaluations across the DoD. So any DoD organization or agency, a lot of the three-letter agencies, all adhere to the continuous evaluation. And then your clearance can be verified by any entity who has access to DIS. And DIS is the system that FSOs use. So if you're applying to another position and the recruiter asks you for your name and social, that is probably what they need it for. They need to plug it into DIS to verify your clearance so that they can actually proceed with your hiring. And I'm going to hand it over to Lori now.
Thanks, Maram. All right, staying competitive. A clearance will help you qualify, but your skills will get you hired. Cleared employers only care about how fast you can produce, your quality of production, and not just if you're cleared. So that's just something to keep in mind as you are filling out your resumes as well and going through interviews to talk about your skills, what sets you apart from other applicants. You want to make sure that you develop rare hybrid skill sets. Don't just lock yourself into one skill, combine two skills to make you more valuable early on. Minimizing hiring risks. Managers want to bring people on that they can trust. Showing reliability and professionalism goes a long way. Make sure you look the part, show up on time, make a good impression. Strong references from cleared supervisors is something that's very helpful during the hiring process for you. And also making sure that you have a clean clearance history. So, for example, no suspensions, no recent adjudication drama that can come up in your history. Emphasize your active clearance and availability. So, an active clearance does save the employer's time and money, like Maram was explaining. So, having that clearance there and being available when they're looking to start the position is definitely a feather in your cap there. Network inside your cleared ecosystem. So, clearance jobs, being active on LinkedIn, connecting with cleared recruiters who specialize in the agency that you're interested in, staying in touch with former teammates. Those are people that you can use as references that Maram was talking about earlier on. Looking for cleared job fairs and industry days to get more information on different positions and what they're hiring for, making the connections at those job fairs or through those industry days will definitely be helpful as well. And to continue to maintain contact and relationships. So Maram discussed filling out your SF-86, having to list references, having to list supervisors, looking for people that can comment on how you perform at work, what kind of student you are, making sure that you have that available. And then tailoring your resume for the position that you're applying for, knowing your audience. You want to make sure that you're not using the same resume for every single job that you're applying for. They do look to make sure that your skills fit what they are looking for in the job description. So taking time to read the job description, what skills they're looking for, making sure that your resume reflects that will also be key to success. You also want to make sure that if you have a clearance, that it's easy to see on your resume. And then also focusing on what you've actually worked on and what you've learned through your employment history. Next slide, Maram, please. Thanks. For clearance holders, best practices. You always want to assume that you may be a target when you have a clearance at some level. Clearances make people interesting, not important. But adversaries often target access, proximity, networks, and not necessarily rank. Most times people will approach, it'll start off benign and indirect. So you always want to make sure that you're aware and alert with any new contacts that you've made after you have a clearance. Practicing strong personal OPSEC. So share less, not more about your job, your clearances, or projects. Avoid discussing work details in public, online, or with casual contacts. Never confirm or deny any classified involvement. So basically, a rule of thumb, if it doesn't need to be said, don't say it. Be careful with social media. Everybody loves to post on Instagram and Facebook. You just need to be very careful with what you post, especially if it's in a public profile, like job roles, location, travel, any of that. You want to make sure that you're very careful with posting because people do look for individuals that have clearance to get inside and know more about the person to kind of penetrate and get additional information for classified or private information that should not be shared. And you want to be wary of any unsolicited connections, especially after conferences or travel. And adversaries usually use long-term relationship building, and it's not always so obvious, like some obvious scams that you might hear about. It could be a relationship that builds, and then after a period of time, you become a victim of somebody that's trying to take advantage of you because of your access or the position that you are currently holding. It is very important to make sure that you report early and not late if there are any kind of suspicious contacts, if anyone's trying to pressure you, give you gifts, or ask you any kind of odd questions. So you would report that to your FSO. And it is to protect you. It's not anything that would be punitive. But if you do delay it, it does look worse. So again, what Maram was talking about earlier is being honest and upfront and making sure that you are reporting that as soon as possible. In regards to managing foreign contacts, you want to make sure that you are following all of the proper procedures, know what you need to report for your clearance level, keeping records of those required foreign contacts, like Maram explained earlier on the SF-86. There are sections on there that need to be completed with information for foreign contacts. So keeping records of that, knowing the timeline of when you had contact with them, and additional information is something that is needed while you're going through the process, but also when you are already cleared, it is required to be reported. And avoid any unreported financial or business entanglements abroad. You want to make sure that if something happens while you're traveling or there's any kind of financial issues, when you have anything that's reportable, that you're reporting that right away. In regards to controlling financial and personal stressors, like Maram talked about earlier, with debt, any kind of substance misuse, or hidden problems, that can increase your vulnerability. So you do want to make sure that you are honest and reporting that right away and taking care of any of those financial issues that are lingering out there. And then to seek help early. Mitigation is viewed positively. So you want to make sure that you are on top of that and you're taking a handle of what's going on right away. Um, Adversaries exploit pressure. And so you don't need to be perfect, but you do need to make sure that you are following the rules to ensure that it doesn't impact your clearance and your position. And then traveling smart, making sure that you are following official travel briefings, your reporting requirements. As somebody that's cleared before going on any foreign travel, you do need to report it to your FSO within a time period so that they're aware of the travel. When you return, there is a travel debriefing as well. If anything has occurred while you're traveling that needs to be reported, that is the time that you report it. And you do need to assume that devices may be monitored or compromised abroad. So making sure that you're not having any of those kind of conversations or sending any kind of emails or texts that might have information that could compromise you. And of course, avoid any sensitive discussions while traveling, not telling people what you do for a living, that you have a clearance, things like that can definitely put you in hot water. Um, Protecting your digital devices, using strong passwords, using MFA everywhere, making sure that you're not reusing passwords across personal and work accounts to make sure that you do not fall victimization to hackers. Be alert and aware of any kind of phishing schemes, especially messages that reference your work or your clearance. I can tell you when I was traveling overseas, I wound up getting a LinkedIn message that was a little bit fishy. And I did receive a text message that claimed it was the CEO of our company, which was not the case. So, being diligent and making sure that you're not responding or clicking on anything that could, cause you an issue. No common adversary tactics like flattery, curiosity, gradual probing, any kind of request for harmless information, offers of help or money or opportunity, and exploiting shared identity, stress, or grievances. So if something feels off, it probably is. Just make sure that you're always aware and alert to make sure that you don't fall victim to any of those kind of tactics, and maintaining a whole person security mindset. So, security isn't just about classified information, it is about behavior over time. And that is reflective in what Maram talked about earlier about the adjudicative guidelines and looking at all of those different categories on how you are as a whole person, what it is that you've done. Do you continue to do that? Are you a security risk? Are you somebody that can be trusted with classified or sensitive information? And consistency, honesty, and reporting do build trust, and you want to make sure that that's the mindset that you're keeping while looking to move into this career field. And you don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be transparent. Like Maram said, honesty is important. A lot of times people think it's not going to come out. We're not going to find out when we do interviews. And I can tell you, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And we find out a lot of information that the subjects don't report on case papers. And it's definitely it puts you into an issue for honesty, where Maram talked about earlier, where we issue code our cases. If we're going to give somebody a security clearance, the person needs to be honest and trusted, and you really need to be transparent to make sure that everything is out on the table that needs to be reported, so that it's not something that we need to come back and confront later on. It's best for you to get it out and discuss it with the investigator while you sit down during your initial interview. And then I'm going to turn it back to Maram. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. We'll go ahead and move into questions here in a second. I do want to add a little bit to Lori's points here. Having a security clearance makes you it makes you marketable uh, it makes you marketable, right? It allows you to get ahead of other applicants who may not have a clearance, right? So having a clearance makes you marketable, but it also makes you somewhat of a target for the adversaries, as Lori was talking about. So there's a sense of responsibility, right? It's not just that you're trusted to have access to certain projects and certain information, but you're also trusted and expected to keep that almost sacred, to not talk about it, to not discuss it with people that don't need to know about it. And if you're talking about, something about work, with your supervisor on the phone, make sure you're not doing it in the grocery store in the checkout line, so that, other people around you don't pick up on that. If you read even just a little bit about social engineering, people could really build an entire life just on two notes. So there's a lot of responsibility with being a clearance holder. It does make you marketable, but do understand the responsibilities that are associated with serving in those type of positions. Arnold, I'm going to let you kind of monitor the
Sure.
questions here, and I will do my best to answer them.
Awesome. Great presentation. And of course, we have quite a few questions. And I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Uh, I know a lot of our attendees some of them are military, some are international students. So I'm going to try to get a mixture of those. So the first question is, how would having dual citizenship affect, a candidate when they're applying for clearance?
So it doesn't necessarily affect a candidate applying for a clearance, but it is important. And I'll give you an example. If you have an individual who has dual citizenship in the United States, and let's say a country that is one of the heightened risk countries, and again, open information, you can Google after this call what a heightened risk country is, go to the State Department website. It matters, right? Because if you are a citizen of, let's say, a country that is of particular interest to the US government, and maybe your uncle is, being exaggerating here, right? The Ministry of Defense of that country, how is that going to impact you working in a military facility that is, working on a mission maybe against that country, right? For the United States, but against that country. So you have to put yourself in these positions and think about because once you have a clearance, then you are serving the US government, right? And you are in a position of service, and your loyalty and your obedience is to your government. And so it may not affect you getting a clearance. It may not even matter in terms of you getting a clearance. But certainly when you look at, those kind of exaggerated points, then it kind of builds a picture.
Awesome. So the next question is if you already have a secret security clearance, is it easier to get a top secret clearance?
Yes and no. So if you have a secret clearance and you're applying for a position that requires a TS, you're probably not going to get it because you need to have a TS to get in. But if you are in a position, let's say I work for General Dynamics and I've got a secret clearance and I am a junior analyst and I like a position at the same company that requires a TS, that same company, that same FSO can upgrade my clearance and I could potentially take that job. But you cannot come up from the outside with a secret and then expect to get a TS position.
Okay, we have a Lewis who asked a question and says that he held a secret clearance in the military. His last adjudication was in 2018. He left in 2020. What should he expect going into a job that requires an active clearance?
So most clearances are able to be quote unquote picked up within 2 years.
Hmm.
So if you've got a secret with the DoD, if you find a job within 2 years, it's easy to piggyback on that and kind of bring your case papers up to date. And this is a lot of industry
Sure.
terminology, so I'll try to kind of break it down. So a agency is able to bring you in and catch up with the last 2 years of your life. So get your new jobs, maybe a marriage, maybe a divorce, maybe whatever has happened can catch up and get your clearance reactivated. If it's been more than 2 years and you have not held a clearance, it is not active. You will have to start over.
Okay. So 2 years is the magic number there.
Mhm.
Okay, next question is it's a little lengthy, but when assessing foreign military service of dual citizens during U.S. Security clearance, what factors tend to be more determinative? The country involved, or how recent, the role, the service, or the role held, or something like demonstrated post-service integration into U.S.
Is
aligned institutions.
I just want to make sure I understand. This is the individual applying for a clearance. They have served in a foreign military.
A foreign military service, yes.
Yeah, so again, that goes back to the whole person approach. I mean, I
Okay.
can't sit here and give you a definite answer of,
Hmm.
what is going to make or break things. It's definitely a whole person approach, but it's not to say that I haven't seen cases where an individual maybe served in the military in Colombia, came
Hmm.
here, served in the U.S. military, and is in the intel industry. I mean, it happens all the time. It's just something that needs to be reported and is taken into consideration with everything else.
Have you ever had someone to renounce their birth country citizenship to help them through the security process?
Not to help them through the security process, but I have had people offer it during the discussion. They'll say, because the question is, have you ever held dual citizenship? It's not, do you currently hold dual citizenship? So they'll say, yes, I did from this date to this date. And why don't you have it anymore? Well, I renounced it or I denounced it when I became a U.S. citizen. And generally, that's how it is. Most people have kind of gone through that. Some people maintain it. For various reasons. Maybe they have foreign property, maybe the dual citizenship allows them to travel easily back and forth to their home country. I mean, there's so many reasons why people
Sure.
maintain it. But there's also a lot of people that, kind of denounce it once they become a U.S. citizen. So there's really no right or wrong. It's just, kind of how they choose to handle it.
Okay, next question is what if you're having difficulty in verifying their clearance level if they can't get a hold of their FSO?
That's a tricky one. So the individual who I'm gonna ask a follow-up question. Is this somebody who is applying for a job and is in the process and is trying to find out if they're cleared or not? Or is the position that we've applied for and we're waiting to see if they've verified a clearance?
All right, Chad, if you are able to unmute, could you give a little clarity on that?
Yeah, so I already have my job. I was told I was going to be put in for the PF, and so I was just checking to see with them, and I can't seem to get any emails back from the FSO. But I filled out the equips and everything a little over a year ago. I've had TS prior, but that
Mhm.
was in the military back in 2013. So I wasn't sure how the process would go, or if I can move up and look somewhere else.
Yeah, so is this if this is a job that you're currently at, I would ask your supervisor. You could also ask HR. But really your FSO is the only person that's going to be able to tell you. Now, if you apply for another job and you get an offer, they can also check whoever is giving you that other offer. But unfortunately, the person that's processed you for that is going to be the only person that's going to be able to give you an update. There's really not like a hotline you can call and ask for a status kind of thing.
Awesome. All right, next question is if person has previously held a top secret, but it's not active, is that worth anything as far as being marketable? Should they list it on their resume or?
They could list it. It depends also time wise, right? If you
Mhm.
held a top secret clearance 10 years ago, 10 years is a long time of history. So, it doesn't, especially if a position requires active top secret, listing it or
Mhm.
not is not going to make a difference. Um, so it's all about time.
Great. All right, the next question is about the maximum number of years that a person can hold a security clearance. Is it active so long as they continue to be employed in the appropriate position and the clearance is updated and renewed, or is there an upper age limit?
There's no limit.
Okay.
You hold the clearance as long as you have a need to know. So as long as you're in a position that requires that level of clearance, you will continue to
Okay.
maintain it.
Okay. Cash has a question about, and I'm not sure um, about public trust. You
Mhm.
understand that public trust isn't a clearance, but rather it's a simple background investigation. Does having held public trust help in any way to getting a secret uh, clearance?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it is a basic
Okay,
background investigation. I would list it if I'm applying for a job. I'd list that I've held a public
sure,
trust.
absolutely.
That means that you're trusted to a certain extent by an entity, and that serves a purpose.
Awesome. All right, so Michael is asking about could you actually apply for a top secret without employee sponsorship?
No.
Okay. All righty. Great questions. Great questions. If there are any more questions, we have a few minutes left. If you would feel free to unmute or you can also place it in a chat. We've really, and this has been very informative. We've recorded this and we've already, getting requests to share this presentation. So again, Lori and Maram, thank you so much. It looks like we have another question here. Let's see. No, just comments. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. This has been very, very helpful. Let's see here. I might have one more. No, I think I got that one. All righty. We want to mention again for those who are still here, and let me give a shout out to Angie Engel. Angie is our career person, associate director for our alumni. So, Angie, if you want to unmute and give a quick shout out there.
Thank you. Yes, this has been outstanding information for current students and as a reminder to alumni job seekers as well. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Angie. All right. So without further ado, we appreciate all of you joining us on today. This session will be available later on. We mentioned the other events that are coming up. We placed some flyers there in the chat. If you have any other questions, I'm also going to put our email in the chat box here. Feel free to reach out to us and we'll look forward to connecting with you later on. For those of you who have joined us before and who will be joining us maybe for future events, including the Blue Origin, one that will be on Monday, the 26th. We look forward to seeing you then. Again, Lori, Maram, quite a pleasure. Enjoy the snow and enjoy the sun. Thank you so much. Be safe.
Thank you
Have a
so
great
much. Thanks
day.
for having us.
All right.